Hello, I'm author and speaker Richard Perry, and over the last several years I've had the opportunity to write 2 books on biblical prophecy. I should probably point out that I've been studying the Bible and with an emphasis on prophecy now for approaching 30 years. But about a month after 9/11, October in 2001, I was teaching a couple of courses on the time of the end and the return of Christ. One was in the community and one was in the church. And while I was teaching those, God prompted me to pray late one night, and during that prayer, He gave me the name of an individual and said, "See Dr. Schaefer." Now, I didn't know any Dr. Schaefer at the time, so that puzzled me. But I finally figured out that this was probably the Dr. Schaefer at the local university, UGA, and he was a scientist and also a member of the Christian Faculty Forum. So I called him up thinking that he might be the one that I should talk to. And when I finally got a hold of him, he said, "Well, we better get together." And we met the following week on a Wednesday in his office and had a great discussion because he had studied and taught the book of Revelation over the years in his church. And during the discussion, he said that I should write a book, which I dismissed as polite conversation. But at the end of our time, he said he had a lecture to give, and he said he would be leaving, so I started to excuse myself. And I said, "I really have appreciated this time with you, Dr. Schaefer." And I said, "I'm not sure why the Lord put us together." And he looked at me and he said, "No," he said, "you're supposed to write a book." And he said, "Perhaps I said that because for years my friends have been telling me that I should write a book about science and my faith." And he said, "Last week I finished the manuscript," and he reached over a table and handed me a copy, and he said, "Here, would you like a copy?" Which I still have. So I took that to heart and began writing a book. That book got published in 2003. It was called Of the Last Days, Listen, I Tell You a Mystery. It was a comprehensive examination of Old and New Testament biblical prophecies, putting them together to describe the time of the end and the return of Christ. Well, I had that book for several years, and the Lord gave me some assignments with that book. As a matter of fact, He told me to go talk to pastors about the message that He had given me, and I started doing that, and nobody seemed interested, so I stopped. But months later, the Lord said, "No, you're not finished with that assignment I gave you," and I started again. And this time I made a list of 160 pastors. And a year and a half later, when I had finished completing the list, I had given the message to 145 pastors. The message, I should tell you right up front, was 3 parts. There's no pre-trib rapture. 2, now is the time that the church needs to be teaching what the Bible has to say about the return of Christ, not what man says. And 3, there would be grave consequences if the church didn't wake up soon. Well, when I had finished that assignment of taking this message to the pastors, it was in November of 2005. And the Lord said to me, and as I was praying, He said, "Finish this, I've got something else for you to do." Well, that month in 2005, a literary agent on a search for Penguin Group Publishing contacted me out of the blue. I wasn't writing any proposals or suggesting that I write another book. Contacted me and said, "Richard Perry, would you write the Complete Idiot's Guide to the Last Days for Penguin Group Publishing?" And I said, "Yes, I will." Well, I wrote that book, and that book was released by Penguin Group Publishing in November of 2006, a little over a year now, and it's getting rave reviews. Some people even call it the best book on biblical prophecy ever written. Well, I don't know that I would say that, but I can say this, that I've had the opportunity now to write 2 books on biblical prophecy. And the Lord has made it absolutely clear to me that when people ask, and they do, they say, "Well, you've got these 2 books. Which one do you think I should read?" This is the message. You need to read the Bible. Reading another book by man about what man thinks about the Bible is not the answer to the problem today. The problem today is that people are not reading their Bible for themselves and not making up their own mind. They're trusting in man. One of the central messages of the Scripture is that we're to trust in God, take refuge in Him. We are not to trust in man, nor are we to trust in princes, men of high position, of stature, of reputation. And that is clearly the message that the Lord has given me. He's also made it very clear to me that a lot of things we're being told today by men are not true. And we need to turn to the Bible and figure out for ourselves what is true and what isn't, because we've entered into the time of the end.